Hi there, my name is Caroline Mutoko. I'm at the Kenya Bureau of Standards. I'm holding what I'd like to call a volume. And let me explain what it is I'm holding. Dr. Luvonga is the author of the Human Dietary Exposure to Arsenicals in Seafood, Occurrence and Analytical Considerations, and I will call this Volume 1. Because I have a feeling in 5 years you might produce another. When he came in and handed this to me, he called it a document. I told him, let me show you a document. This, sir, is a document. This is not a document. But I want us to start this conversation because arsenicals, I'm sure people said, what did Caroline say right there? Dr. Luvonga, I want to start with you defining what is arsenic. Because as a Kenyan, I know arsenic from movies.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What is arsenic?
So arsenic is an element in the periodic table. Mm-hmm. It is actually in the group 5 of the periodic table. So for group 5, for most of the people, no nitrogen, they know phosphorus. Yes. Those are the most common elements that are known in the group 5. But there's also arsenic in the same group. So arsenic is an element in the periodic table, and for those ones who are chemistry enthusiasts, mm-hmm. It has an atomic number or number 33 on the periodic table.
But this particular study, it's a study.
Yes.
Is exposure to arsenic in seafood,
yes.
Occurrence and analytical concept. So,
yes.
You know me, I was ready for you. Niliandika maswali.
Yes.
How does arsenic end up in seafood?
Okay. It's a long and complex process. So basically, everything that you do on planet Earth mm-hmm. Usually finds its way into the sea. These things find themselves into the water, the rivers, mm-hmm. and they find themselves into the sea.
Yes.
So when arsenic gets into the sea, mm-hmm. there's usually a mechanism in which it finds its way into the living organisms.
Okay.
So one of the ways is that arsenic can be consumed by the living organism as part of something that I want to define as arsenolipids. This is lipids, the one that you know, the omega-3, omega-9, mm-hmm. and all those kinds of lipids. Mm-hmm. But instead of having phosphorus on it, because most of them usually have phospholipids, mm-hmm. instead of having phosphorus on it, they have arsenic on it.
Oh.
Yes. So we have arsenolipids. So those arsenolipids, the phospholipids usually form the membrane of the cell.
Oh.
Yes. But now instead of, because sometimes the phosphorus is not enough in the seawater, mm-hmm. the animals, mm-hmm. they adopt, and then they now replace phosphorus with arsenic. Because they have exactly the same chemical structure, phosphorus and arsenic.
Didn't know that.
Yes, they do have the same chemical structure.
However, the source of arsenic it can't just be what you were telling me, everything we do, whether we farm, we wash our dishes. I mean,
volcanic activity actually generates arsenic, mm-hmm. and then there are things like when you are doing like lumbering, the treatment of the wood. Uh-huh. Usually the compounds that you use are usually made of arsenic.
Okay.
Yes.
Therefore, arsenic finds its way to the sea, yes. and into the organisms, as you said.
Yes.
For you and me, that would be into our calamari, lobster, prawns, our fish, yeah, our yes. cray, our
yes.
crab.
Yes.
Okay, so you've decided that you will study the exposure in seafood. First and foremost, why?
No, I actually bumped into that. Okay. What happened is that
I'm loving the fact that I wasn't ready for this.
Yes. Uh-huh. I was going to do my PhD on petroleum, petroleonomics. We discovered petroleum in Kenya.
Yes.
So I got excited about this. So I wanted to go and study petroleum. Mm-hmm. So when I went to, I was doing my PhD at University of Maryland, mm-hmm. and also at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. That's where I was doing my research. Uh-huh. So when I went there, they were the ones who were funding my PhD. They told me petroleum is a dying industry. So don't waste your time, don't waste resources, don't waste energy on that.
Whoa.
So they told me that you need to look into something else. And something else, they told me it has to be something related to food safety because they had funding from the National Institute of Health on food safety. So
umetoka hapa petroli.
Yes.
Umefika huko kaambiwa
brother. They told me now. You have to go to do something related to food safety. A lot has been done in food safety. I looked at aflatoxins, I looked at pesticides, I looked at all those things, but none of them was clicking with me. So I went and then I was like, okay, let's look at the elementals. What element has people not studied a lot? So I went and looked at mercury, I looked at bismuth, I looked at selenium, all this. Then I landed on arsenic. As I was reading, I was shocked. I only knew about the inorganic arsenic, what people usually know it as poison. But then I discovered that there are actually
all of us made from the movies.
Exactly. So I discovered there are other species of arsenic. So arsenic has a huge family of species, more than 200 as we speak. Yes. So I discovered this, and I was like, okay, let me now read a little bit more about this. So I started reading, and I was reading, I kept on discovering more and more interesting and exciting things about arsenic. Incidentally, at the same time, the Chinese had banned seafood from America, specifically guidak, because they discovered that they had arsenic in them. And the trade is usually to the tune of $80 million per year.
Come on.
Yes. So this is revenue that the American government was actually losing. America were trying to find a way to prove to the Chinese government that they have the capacity to test for arsenic, not just total arsenic, but the species of arsenic, and to tell if the species present is toxic or not.
Come on.
Yes.
Petroleum out the door.
Petroleum out the door. Come
arsenic and seafood.
Yes.
My goodness.
So I was working on a project on arsenic in guidak, and then now when I looked at the sea, sea has so many organisms.
Yes.
So I was looking at it now. Okay, now when I look at guidak, is this representative of the sea?
It isn't.
It isn't.
It isn't.
So what I did, I now went and looked at different kinds of seafood.
Incidentally, to all of you, guidak mtagugo. We're here to talk about arsenic.
Yes.
And
so I looked at the whole guidak. So the whole animals in the sea.
Yes.
So I started looking at proxy animals and the ones that we eat. So at the very least level, the cyanobacteria, there was spirulina.
Yes. And when I was leafing through your volume, I told you, I was introduced to spirulina about 3 years ago.
Yes.
And it's very healthy.
So at the very bottom, there's spirulina.
At the bottom?
Yes. Now, from there, then I went a bit higher, and I was looking at crustaceans and mollusks. Now, guidak is actually a bivalve mollusk. Now, the crustacean I was looking at, especially because of its consumption in America. Shrimp. Now, when I looked at shrimp, I looked at two kinds of shrimp. The ones that are wild caught in the sea,
and those that are farmed.
Yes. Now, from shrimp, I moved. Now, what do shrimps eat, and what do the fish eat? They eat kelp, seaweed.
Yes. Hence spirulina.
So, spirulina is lower than kelp. Kelp is higher. Kelp is actually a seaweed. It's almost like the grass of the sea.
Yes.
And then I looked at shrimp. I looked at kelp. I looked at spirulina, and then I also looked at salmon, because of how much salmon is consumed in America.
Guilty as charged.
Yes. So I know in Kenya we take a lot of tilapia, but because this one was being funded by the Americans, and the Americans consume a lot of salmon, so I studied salmon. And then I studied also the wild caught and also the farmed. The farmed.
Yes.
Yes.
Where?
Yes.
So, I mean, just as you were speaking, you said seafood is a major dietary source of total arsenic in humans.
Yes, it is.
So those people who are just like, I don't eat seafood, I don't touch it, those guys, arsenic.
They consume it without knowing.
Without knowing.
Yeah. No, sometimes ignorance is bliss.
This is also true. Yeah. Excluding regions with widespread elevated drinking water contamination.
Yes.
So there is arsenic in drinking water.
Yes, a lot of it, especially in India, Bangladesh, a bit of Japan. there's a lot of arsenic in sea. And as you can see, those are areas where there's a lot of volcanic activity.
Yes.
So in Japan, especially in India, Bangladesh, there's a lot of arsenic. Now, there's an interesting story about that.
Please.
Now, what happens is that how this now became a problem is that, those are places where there's the monsoon rains, whatever. So there's a lot of dysentery and whatever waterborne diseases.
Yes.
So they decided that let's sink boreholes for these people.
Yeah.
So they were sinking boreholes in order to give them potable water. As they sank the boreholes, while they're solving one problem, they're actually creating another problem.
Yes.
Because now the borehole water had elevated levels of arsenic. And they did not discover this until people now started developing cancers, skin lesions, and whatever. Then they discovered that it's actually arsenic toxicity that's affecting the people.
Wow.
So they solved one problem and created an entirely different problem.
We've also done that problem here.
Yes.
We solved one problem by sinking boreholes, but now all our children have fluorosis.
Yes, they have fluorosis.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I have to admit something.
Yeah.
I was very nervous about having this conversation with you. I thought you were going to become so technical, we will not enjoy. So tell me, because these people are looking at me.
Yes.
What are the potential health risks, if any, associated with arsenic through seafood? So
through seafood, if you consume a lot of arsenic, but then arsenic has capability of crossing the blood barrier, blood-brain barrier. Yes, it has the potential to do that. And there are tests that have been done on Drosophila melanogaster, that's the fruit fly. And it has been shown that arsenic actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. And it can also cross the barrier in the placenta. So when you consume arsenic, it can get to your kid if you're pregnant. Watcha. Yes. We needed to know that. Yes. So go on, tell us, what are the levels? When you look at arsenic, it has a neurotoxic effects, and then it can affect the endocrine system. Arsenic causes cancer. Yes. And then arsenic can also cause death. There are lethal doses of arsenic. Yes, that's a lethal dose. Yes. Yes. So the lethal dose for arsenic is around 50 milligrams per kilogram. Wow, okay. Yeah. So that means what's normally found? So there are instances where we found more than that. There are instances where we have found up to 3,000 milligrams per kilogram. Yes. How does that happen? Actually, in my research, especially in the Guidac, the levels were really high. Okay. Now, the beautiful thing about it is that around 97 to 98% of that arsenic was arsenobutane. Arsenobutane is non-toxic. Aha! Yes. I know you're all sitting there saying, Caroline, are you saying we write off seafood? Do I look like the sort of person who would sit here with Dr. Luvonga if we were going to write off seafood? We're not writing off seafood. No. You should see me when I go to the coast. Mimi, unipatie kuku. And there's a kula kuku Nairobi. And there's prawn there. And octopus. So how do the levels of arsenic in seafood consumed in Kenya compare to global? In Kenya, most of the fish that you consume are from freshwater lakes. So in that particular case, the levels of arsenic should be really, really low. And this is postulation. I've not actually analyzed. Okay. But this is postulation that the most of those the fish from those sources would not have elevated levels of arsenic. Because it has to be in the sea. Yes. So what is it you want us to be aware of? Maybe you're telling us as we travel? So what I want people to be aware of is that when you consume seafood, there are chances that you are exposed to arsenic. Okay. However, this does not mean that you stop enjoying your seafood. Continue enjoying your seafood by all means. All right. All that you need to do is, what this study informed me, is that there are some seafoods that have elevated levels of arsenic. For example, we're taking notes. For example, spirulina. But I'm a spirulina consumer. Now, unfortunately for spirulina, there's something I didn't mention. Spirulina has, arsenic has different kinds of species. So there's the elemental arsenic, which we
the
cannot...
one you told us that was on the periodic table.
Yes, that was the elemental arsenic. Now, there's arsenic in ionic form. So there's arsenic 3 and there's arsenic 5. Now, arsenic 3 and arsenic 5 are the ones that are usually found in seafood.
Okay.
Now, the lower the oxidation state of arsenic, the more toxic is it. It is. So arsenic 3 is more toxic than arsenic 5.
Okay.
So the trivalent, the arsenic 3, is more toxic than arsenic 5, which is pentavalent. So that's one thing to note. Now, the arsenic 3, the trivalent, is a non-carcinogen, category 1 carcinogen. And then arsenic 5 is a probable carcinogen.
Okay.
Now, in seawater, what is usually present in seawater is arsenic 5. However, for it to get into the living organism, it must be changed to arsenic 3. For it to have access to
it must be converted.
It must be converted. There's something called the Challenger's mechanism. This one was done in 1945.
Apo naringa lakini endelea tu. Why are you targeting my spirulina?
So spirulina has a lot of inorganic arsenic, actually trivalent inorganic arsenic.
Therefore,
spirulina is actually dangerous.
But we add some to our smoothies and it is good for us.
Yes, we do add
it's a great
spirulina.
source of protein.
Actually, 60 to 70% of spirulina is actually protein. And then it is very rich in antioxidants.
Yes.
Now, the antioxidants in spirulina are 20 times better than beta-carotene.
Sasa, we know it's a great source of protein, great antioxidant, lafu natuambia, but the capacity of this thing having arsenic is also equally high.
Yes.
Unataka tufanyaje?
So that means that when you are taking spirulina, you need to be careful about arsenic. You need to look at the certificate of analysis to see if there's arsenic and what form of arsenic is present.
And the measurement of.
And the amounts that are present in the spirulina.
Okay.
Now, the levels are usually 10 parts per million. Admissible level is usually 10 parts per million.
Okay.
Of arsenic in food. Now, the good thing is that I found elevated levels in spirulina, but the ones that I found, the levels were up to 0.3.
Okay.
Yeah. But that does not mean that it is not toxic, because remember, you take spirulina in a smoothie, so it's almost like intravenous.
Yes.
It's bioavailable.
Yes.
So there are some forms of arsenic that are not bioavailable, like arsenobutane. You will take it and it will come out of your body.
All right.
Yeah. But spirulina will actually find its way into your bloodstream. It will find its way into your kidneys. It will find its way into your liver, and it will find its way into your brain. That's the danger.
That's the danger.
That's the danger. But what I want to do for Kenya, first of all, we should know that there's a lot of spirulina in Kenya.
Yes.
It's not only that we are not mining it. There's a lot of spirulina in Lake Elementaita and Lake Nakuru.
Volume 3 is coming.
So, I wanted to work on the spirulina. But do you know why flamingo love Lake Nakuru?
The algae.
It's actually the spirulina, not the algae.
It's not algae.
No.
We have learned something new. Let's talk also algae. Gives them their color. It gives them their this, their that.
Yes. And the feathers of the flamingo, the pink.
That pink.
Yes.
Is because of that?
The spirulina, which has an antioxidant called astaxanthin.
Where?
That is
Volume 5?
That is a very important antioxidant. When you go and buy fish, I know Kenyans will love our meat white. So when you see a pink meat, especially fish, we avoid that.
Yes.
That is now the healthy fish because it has astaxanthin in it. So I'm going to be looking I'm going to be studying the flamingos and spirulina.
But the reason I was saying, when you talked about the spirulina and you said we're not harvesting spirulina.
Yes.
Is that in the conversation of food and feeding ourselves, something that is so easily available,
yes,
and is such a huge source of protein,
yes,
is important.
it's extremely important.
So get to work.
Especially when you look at the people who have who are protein deficient.
Yes.
This is important.
Yes.
Because what this would mean is that in fact the government can decide, because you're having fortification of maize meal.
Yes.
Instead of now just fortifying it with vitamins
yes.
and elements, we can also add spirulina, which is which will has a lot of protein in it,
exactly,
and does not necessarily, it's not necessarily going to change the color of the
exactly,
and people will get protein when
protein
you eat
along
ugali,
with their starch.
Exactly. When you're eating ugali, you're also eating protein.
Mekwambia volume gapi? Ukona kazi.
Yeah.
I was not ready to be this excited by this conversation, but I am happy I came.
Yeah.
I'm happy you went to Maryland.
Yeah.
And you looked at the geoduck?
Yeah. Guiduck.
Guiduck.
Yes.
Yes. Guiduck. It's spelled G-E-O duck.
Yes.
Guiduck.
Yes.
And then I am going to tell you all, if you're looking for conversations around the measurement of elements,
yes,
even in our food.
Yes.
Speak to KIBS.
Yes.
The department here of metrology,
yes,
is first among equals in
yes,
sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
And that I can say because I'm the one who was in your dosimetry lab, and you can the temperature and you can the pressure. But Dr. Luvonga, well done. What you've done is awaken an interest,
yeah, in
what we consume, but also you've given yourself work.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes. Well done. Yes. I've loved this. Thank you so much.
Demonstrate.
What?